Hello and good evening, and welcome to the Central Region MUFON presentation. This evening, we have a very good, very interesting presentation for you with Keith Seland. And before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to this channel, please. And that way you will get notices of upcoming presentations and also our radio shows. We do have a weekly broadcast radio show on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time, and that is called MUFON Midwest. And of course, the Central Region is the 6 states of North and South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. But of course, anybody is allowed to watch. This is free for everybody, so welcome, no matter where you are. And we appreciate you joining us. Our speaker this evening is Keith Seland. He has conjoined research on ancestral anthropology with advocating an extraterrestrial intelligence relationship agenda of discovery and UAP case study work for 18 years. His worldwide exploration and disclosure projects have led to the publication of research papers and 3 book titles branded in the Humaniverse Guide Science Education platform. A 4th title is at the publisher in the edit review process. His education platform, the Humaniverse Guide, includes a website, YouTube, and Facebook channels, all identified by the Humaniverse title and brand. All publications are available at booksellers worldwide. And without further ado, welcome Keith Seland.
Hi everyone. Hi Margie. How are you doing? How's it going?
Doing great. How are we with the PowerPoint process at the moment?
Okay. I have to make an apology in that my PowerPoint presentation, I use an awful lot of photos, live photos from site locations that I've been at. That has caused the PowerPoint file to become unwieldy large. So as far as being able to present the slides and videos for this, I'm prepared if you are, Margie, if we want to just conduct this to go along as a chat kind of a situation, maybe a question and answer, or at least me just going through and trying to summarize, at least anyways, followed by a question and answer. I apologize, but unfortunately, with the size of the PowerPoint, it's not seeming to fit the parameters of the presentation platform that we have right now.
Okay. Plan B might be in your photos. If you have your photos in one file, you might be able to show those as we're going along if you want to show a few. But why don't we just get started with just explain how you got interested in this study?
Yeah, it's been a lifelong, not so much project, but a fascination and eventually a deep dive into the study of people, the anthropology part of it, and UFOs, ETs, the other intelligences not from planet Earth. My interest in that started out, I was about 4 years old. My father flew in World War II. He flew a B-17, and he was pilot. And back in those times, he had a few experiences where with what was called Foo Fighters back then.
Right.
Those balls of light that seemingly under intelligent control moved around the plane. It's very, very difficult to debunk those as weather phenomenon or whatever. That the way that all the soldiers and pilots talked about it was that they were uh, basically moving around in straight lines and so fast and not at a random. It's something way more than at a random pace. So, in other words, uh, if anyone in the audience has a relative, or especially a parent who was a veteran, they know that the veterans, it's an unwritten code that exists even today amongst soldiers, that they're very reluctant to talk about their experiences. But if you were to ask my father about those experiences, he would open up and explain those to you. So as a 4-year-old looking up at my father as my hero, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
I became fascinated by the whole idea of extraterrestrial intelligences, those that have been visiting, as I've come to find out, have been visiting planet Earth for since before recorded history, since prehistory. Our species goes back many, many, many thousands of years in describing and leaving symbolisms for images and stories that they have of other intelligences who, amongst our Neolithic ancestors, depicted them, ETs, as gods and deities. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the ET connection. Now, as I spin through my life here, unfortunately, the realities of life, education, practical education, starting to earn a living, having family, things like that, got in the way of the ufology. But the interest in the sciences, and especially human beings, never really left. So, as I got into my career and was able to become a little more comfortable, I opened up a second career in the anthropology sciences and archaeology. Those two disciplines are so conjoined together that you can think of them as basically one. My entry into the anthropology part of it took this shape in that archaeologists study the artifacts, anthropologists study the human beings that created the artifacts that all the other archaeologists study. So my deep dive into our ancestors, that's pretty much what I study, although a perk is to being able to study human beings in today's culture and gaining little psychologies and things like that from learning about our behaviors and whatnot. Behavior is a good starting point into a lot of my research and a lot of my travels. Our ancestors, and I mean going back into the Neolithic and Upper Paleolithic times, uh, basically, and this is going to be the title of, I have a manuscript that is in publication right now, so the editing process. The title of it is going to be We Are Them, They Are Us, Our Ancestors, Us, and ET. It's going to be a deep, deep dive into the attitudes, the behaviors, the psychology, and the evolution of the species that's known as Homo sapiens sapien. Now that's going back, and if you, I see you, Margie. If you want to jump in at all, go right
Well, I
ahead
love the name
and
of the
jump in.
book.
Oh, okay.
Because being in the business, so to speak, for so many years, I've heard that said many times. We are us, they are us, and
We
we
are,
are them. Yeah,
and we are, yeah, we are them.
yeah,
And
yeah.
oh no,
Because
go
they
ahead, Margie.
seeded us. I mean, there's evidence that they created us. So is that the premise or part of
Oh,
the premise?
oh, in that ET had potentially a production part of the production process in us. Now, myself being of a trained, how will I put this, pragmatic, practical, empirical nature. As a boots on the ground anthropologist, I look for the empirical evidence, so to speak, in many, many, many ways. Um, if there's like a story or whatever, I'll give you an example. In one of my adventures in Egypt, I came across in the Hathor Temple in the Dendera crypt. For those of you that are familiar with the Dendera light bulb and the story behind that and the potentiality for ancient aliens, and it's a ancient electricity and
Mhm.
everything. When I got in there to the crypt, I took one look at it, and within 5 seconds, basically, I shook my head and I says, "That's not a battery. That is a depiction of the Milky Way."
Oh
The
my.
and Yes, and if you want to, at the outset, if you want to follow up, I did write and publish a research paper. It is on my website, thehumaniverse.org, so you can read up on the Dendera light bulb theory, so to speak. So I basically debunked it, that theory as it being a light bulb connected up by electric batteries and things like that. Basically, what that says, that imagery, that symbolism, is that it is a ritual ceremony depiction of Harsamtus, who was the son of Horus and Hathor in ancient Egyptology. Their ceremony for the transfer of the soul into eternity. The Egyptians have a ritual by using barges to carry the soul from the east to the west as a direction point, or get jumping on the avenue for the path of their soul to transfer into the Milky Way. And their multi-metaphorical use, if you look at the imagery, it shows that the lotus flower, which is very sacred to them, is metaphorically a boat, a barge, and all of the representations of gods and deities, Hathor, Horus, Say, Harsamtus, and a few of the other Egyptian gods are being depicted in this panel to show the path of Harsamtus' soul into heaven and into the Milky Way, the afterlife, which the connection of the Milky Way is that for all of our ancestors, and this is one of many universals, Margie, amongst Homo sapiens sapiens, they all thought of the Milky Way as heaven and hell. Their
Hmm.
souls, the souls, the new souls, the unoccupied ones, came down from the Milky Way to occupy the new human being, the baby. The deceased human body then separated from the soul that was part of him or her, and they had to pass through, the soul had to pass through, in some religions, the pearly gates, or the 42 ideals of Ma'at in ancient Egyptology, and that if the soul had to pass these tests, or else the soul was being recycled into another body. And that ties into some ancient Hindu practices of samsara and those rituals, to where, or those ideas, to where the soul was being reincarnated through many iterations until they found what, how am I putting this? Their ultimate eternal life in heaven. So
Okay.
um, to debunk the the um, the Dendera light bulb, it's basically a depiction of this ritual ceremony of the soul of Harsamtus as representative of one of Egypt's power elite, the deities, on the course into heaven. So that's an example of kind of how, I'm kind of pragmatic and empirical about things, but still that leaves so much in circling back to the ET realm and whatever. There is still so much overwhelming evidence and speculation and conjecture to be put together, in that it's I am way past the point of if ET exists. It's that they do, and that we should be right now in our generations and our society starting to make plans of action for when the formal global acknowledgments of ETs actually exist. So that's I'm tying in a few different and
Mhm.
not different, but core elements of what my research and my study is all about. And in this is all in relation to the PowerPoint that unfortunately I couldn't bring up to you tonight. But I'm basically going through this PowerPoint and bringing up the talking points and um, and everything about my core studies and in trying to get society propelled on the start of a plan of action, uh, a couple of assumptions kind of have to be made, kind of realities in that. When it comes to ET and disclosure and all of those things, we know pretty well that the governments are not going to cooperate with us in terms of acknowledging ET exists, and it's going to take a long, long, long time for that. And secondly, we can't rely on ET just to come down like Klaatu and Gort would in the old famous, that's my favorite movie, The Day
Yeah,
the Earth Stood Still.
yeah, me
Uh,
too.
yeah, just awesome. Unfortunately, we can't rely on that. So my penetration into proposal for plans of action is that we should be studying our ancestors to
Mhm.
learn as much about planning for ET as learning about ourselves, because when the introductions and the relationships with ET actually happen, we're going to need to know and we're going to learn more about ourselves than we've ever learned before. And what we have learned from anthropology and archaeology and history, we seem to have forgotten in this day and age. Um,
Mhm. Let me bring this up real
sure.
quick so we can just go back for a minute. This is the Dendera light bulb that you were talking about.
That's
How
exactly, yes, yes.
so how is it the Milky Way?
That, the filament in the middle,
Mhm.
that's in the middle of the bulb. That is, and that's, boy, I wish I had my PowerPoint, but I'd had side by side photos. That is what the shape of the Milky Way looks like
Oh,
at night. I looked at this
okay.
in the Dendera crypt. It's real tiny, and I'll give a perspective. I don't think the hallway is much more than about maybe 4 feet wide. It's in the crypt, the basement of the Hathor Temple, and it's dark. And there's 9 of these different depictions, panels throughout the hallway there. But it only took me about 5 seconds, and I saw the depiction of the light bulb, and I says, "No, that's the Milky Way." I'm a backyard star watcher, so to speak. I have a couple of telescopes,
Mhm.
so I have been fortunate enough to see the Milky Way live at night, and that's just one of many, 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 many things that we have as in our current society do not enjoy the advantages of that our ancestors actually had
Yes.
those years ago. So you put all the pieces together of the lotus symbolizing the day barge and the night barge, the barge of the soul, and the box that say sits on top of the ancient god, the box that's supposed to be the batteries, that contains the soul of Harsantas over on the right hand side, and the goddess, not Hathor, but oh, who is the main goddess holding up the Milky Way? Um,
Osiris?
no, no, no.
No.
It's the goddess. Oh boy, I just Memory lapse. In any event, depictions of the gods Horus and Hathor are the ones holding hands, and the barge is moving across from east to west. You can see on the left-hand side the lotus flower, and that's actually the conduit for the soul moving up in towards and into the sky towards the Milky Way, which is basically heaven.
Wow, well, that is a different interpretation. Oh my goodness. I'll bet that's throwing a few people for a loop.
And
Uh,
it's backed up by the hieroglyphs that are,
mm,
you can see if you saw the whole panel and the exploded view of
oh,
it, you can see along the top and the left and the right, the hieroglyphs back it up.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Uh, are you a fan of Zechariah Sitchin and his his
Yeah. Uh,
translations? Yeah,
of the Anunnaki
right.
and Enlil and Enki and yep, the trip into planet Earth and whatnot. Yes,
Mhm.
I'm a little familiar with that history. Yep.
And then how do you feel about current day? Do you believe that there are ETs walking among us and underneath us and inside the earth right now?
Yes, I believe they haven't left. They came many thousands of years ago, and for those of you that want to get into ancient Mesopotamia and the connections between the Anunnaki and some of the cuneiform historical texts, Gilgamesh, the mythologies and
Mhm.
things like that. Um, I believe that ETs came even before that, and some of the depictions amongst even earlier ancestors, such as those in the Neolithic, and we'll go back as far as the Tepes in Anatolia, the Göbekli, Karahan, Tazli, Neveli Kori, Catalhoyuk, and we're going back 15,000 years ago. They had it's popular conjecture that all of these shamanism, the chemical stimulations of creating the depictions of symbolism, such as the alien creatures that you see on the Great Gallery in Utah, the ancient aliens, the famous Sago Canyons, and all civilizations throughout the world. It's likened to chemical stimulation that impelled the shamans to produce all of those things. Uh,
Do you mean
Shamanism.
like peyote? Is that what you're talking about?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Ayahuasca.
Right.
All of the drugs.
Psilocybin.
Yep,
Mhm.
that we've come to know in modern times and still use and still legalize and the whole bit. Um, Shamanism, it wasn't all chemical stimulation. There were bona fide, I believe, sightings, relationships with ETs that actually landed and had interactions with the human beings of back then. Now, it's those things. While I do have some pictures, unfortunately, from my PowerPoint, I could have shown you that I do have images of things that do look like spacecraft and ETs and things like that. What I'll do is I'll put those up on my website at a very near point in the future for those of you that want to give me a little time to do that. And I'll
Okay.
throw those PowerPoint slides up there so you can get a little bit better remembering our conversation and then go from there. But um, going back to the shamanism and human beings, our ancestors, in that they're us, we're them. Just real quick, our biology is the same as theirs. Our DNA is the same. If
Mhm.
I have a friend of mine from my university who was on worked on the original genome project, and I asked him the question, would our DNA be compatible with our ancestors from Göbekli Tepe time? And he says it's reasonable to presume that the DNA could be swapped and we could it could be interchangeable between us. I'm making the point that we're them, they're us. Biologically, we're the same as our Neolithic and Upper Paleolithic ancestors. Our brains, our thought processes, our psychology, our neurology, our biology are the same as theirs were. We're the end product of our ancestors. We should take this time right now to thank them for giving us the brains and the minds and the critical thinking and the bodies that they did give us. That said, going back to the shamanism part, uh, human beings, when they, the urbanization of the human species, when people came together from hunter gatherers into villages, then cities, then civilizations, they had to worry about a new phenomenon that in their hunter gatherer lives they didn't know anything about, and that was called socialization. Hunter gatherers were egalitarian, all for one for all. Their 24/7 was get food, get water, get shelter to survive and procreate. As their brains and minds developed better weaponry, it eventually created more time in their 24/7 existence to take time away from seeking out food and water and whatnot. And with the aid of changing climate, in other words, the end of the ice age and the melting of the ice caps and the glaciers and everything, it opened up a climatology and an ecology where food became a lot more plentiful, and that gave human beings more time in their 24/7 to think about other things, think about advancing, think about moving together into villages and creating labor and food industries where they could store food, they could cultivate food, they could domesticate animals and create more food, which then gave them more time in a circular positive feedback loop to then create more time to create new ideas and whatnot. One of those most important ideas in early urbanization times was socialization. Communities came together, they had to be governed. The concepts of power and control were thus created by governing bodies, the leaders, the alpha males and alpha females, the A type people that were going to govern their communities and their civilizations and create trade and trading industries and more labor industries and whatnot. Shamanism was a ritual tool that was manipulated by the leadership, the governing bodies as a power and control mechanism for cultivation of socialization, social bonding, keeping the sheep in the flock, so to speak, as part of a grand urban structure. So the shamans, via their chemical, ritual, ceremonial processes and whatnot, those rituals invited the common folk, the power elite, in which shamans were included as part of the power elite, then were able to exert control over their communities, the common people, so to speak, by repetitive cultural ceremonies and rituals, which very most often involved ancestral worship and interactions with the sky, the night sky and the day sky. And so you're bringing in now the sun, the moon, the stars, the Milky Way, heaven and hell, as one big grand human condition that drove human beings in those communities towards staying as communities and being devoted to their leaders, their power elite, and through their ceremonies and rituals, followed the tools of the shamans in relieving their psychological and their physical stresses and fears and tensions and whatnot. I've thrown a lot of concepts at you. I'm going to try and dissect and pick through a few of those things or whatever. But these are all universals amongst the behavior and the attitudes and the function of human beings. Today,
Hmm.
every one of us have stresses and fears that we on a daily basis that we have to take care of. Back then, they had the same fears and stresses and tensions and whatnot of a physical, biological nature, of a fight or flight nature from wild animals and things like that. So they had to deal with those things. And that's where the leadership, the power elite, and the shamans came into play, in that appeals to the shamans who had the connections, spiritual connections with transdimensional forms and beings and whatnot, which include some versions of ETs, in trying to move to the endpoint of allaying and eliminating the stress and the fear and the tensions in the patient or the individual that has sought the shaman's help. So there's an awful lot going on in terms of how the attitudes and the behaviors, basically how the human condition was in Neolithic times, in Upper Paleolithic times, and even coming forward as far as in the Holocene. You start to introduce from the Göbekli Tepe time to the Mesopotamia time to the ancient Egypt time, and then on to South America, the pre-Incan, the pre-Columbian, the Andean cultures, and Native Americans in North America, and the Aborigines in Australia. So to summarize, and maybe let you talk for a second, Margie, I'm trying to get across the points that human beings have many, many, many universal attitudes and behaviors, mindsets, and human natures that were created, developed by our ancestors, and that all the ancient cultures throughout the world shared. They had all had their same stories, their same methods of development, their same insights, intuitions, inventions. To summarize that, again, we should be thanking our ancestors for giving us the intelligence and the wherewithal to what we're able to accomplish today. They gave us the building blocks to create new inventions and new progress and whatnot. So we got to give them more credit, but also too, studying them will help us rediscover a lot of the spiritualism, a lot of the holism, a lot of the ancestral worship and the cosmology that was so much an important part of their lives. And that once we develop relationships with ET, they're coming from outside of planet Earth. We have to become reacquainted with the spirituality and the cosmology and those things that comprised the human nature and the human condition of all our ancestors.
You know, you mentioned earlier the use of chemical assistance with the shamans would use some form of that, and indeed that is being done today by many. And in my analysis of that, it appears to me that that is one way of getting to an altered state of consciousness. Another way is deep meditation. And I've come to the understanding as of late, anyway, this is my theory, that what we're actually doing when we alter our state of consciousness is move ourselves into a higher dimension. So we are, let's say, in the fifth dimension rather than third. dimension. And that is where the ETs are. That's their dimension, or one that they go through. They may be in higher dimensions as well, but they may come through, and then we're able to have that contact, see them, and have close contact. What are your thoughts on that? What's your opinion?
Yeah. Some of them are interdimensional. A lot of them, I think, have the capability of using those extra dimensions. A lot of my research and study has to do with the three-dimensional version, so to speak. This is, I'm going to bring up the cultural phenomenon of current fads, so to speak. Now, 30 years ago, I should say currently, the interdimensional and higher dimensional raising of consciousness seems to have become a lot more popular in current cultural views. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, 50, 70, 80, 100 years ago, it was more of a three-dimensional universe kind of a thing. So my point is that I'm suspecting that maybe 20, 30 years from now, as popular culture gets a little bit uh, too used to the raising of consciousness and whatnot, they won't completely eliminate it from their deck of cards, so to speak. But I think the next cultural phenomena, the next popular cultural following, will be an integration of all of those different dimensional ETs, especially if and when we have developed and started relationships with them. That'll bring back the three-dimensional type of beings. I believe that ETs exist in all of those dimensions. Uh, we were depicted in our, again, popular culture through entertainment and that ET seems to have the shape of the classical gray beings. And my thesis is that, and then this is all conjecture, in that there are many representative species of ETs. It's liking it more to a how will I put this, for lack of a better, either the Star Wars phenomenons, or the Star Trek. I hate to bring in the Star Trek, but they did depict quite a few different species of alien beings and whatnot. I think the universe is populated with many different varieties, instead of just honing in and being fixated on the classical gray types. But then also, those are only depictions of three-dimensional beings. We've got the ones that reside in the higher dimensions, and in that all of those exist. I can say from an empirical viewpoint, in a scholastic academic sense, in that on the landscape, on the academic university landscape, there's an explosion of knowledge that's starting to happen in terms of the most macro term I can use is electromagnetism, and the phenomenon involved with that. The idea that, and this is to share or reacquaint ourselves with an idea from our ancestors, in that they believed and practiced that all matter resonated with a unique frequency of energy, hence tie in with the transdimensional and those ultra dimensional consciousness raising activities, and activities with those other beings. Our ancestors had fantastic intuition over those ideas, and many things. I mean, how did they, to divert real quick, going back to the chemicals, how did they obtain the knowledge to combine the different chemical physical elements that created ayahuasca? That doesn't exist in nature as one element. You have to put different chemical substances
Right.
together in order to where did that invention
Yeah.
come from? It could have come from ET. It could have come. They could have maybe watched and as human beings often they practiced and they followed and they learned what they saw. Maybe they saw animals eat one plant and eat the other one, and somehow by some magic instance the animals just started going into schizophrenia or something like that. I don't know. A lot of it
And they
trial and
said,
error.
"Hey, we wanna do that."
Yeah, exactly. How
Uh,
did human beings develop that? And again, ET could have maybe shown them that, or the shamans, again, trial and error, the curiosity, let's mix all these chemical substances together. They couldn't write the formulas for opium or whatever like we have in our chemical chemistry labs today. They had the intuition, and that's where we should be giving them a lot more credit for having those intuitions about chemical substances and the workings of nature, electromagnetic frequencies, that all matter and inorganic matter, rocks and mountains, and that all had their own energy frequencies. Native America, and again, universal. Every one of our ancient civilizations were so holistic and spiritual and cosmically aware of all of those things, and they probably didn't learn all of those from ET. They had the intuition, they just didn't have the textbooks and the digital platforms with which to do their chemistry homework or their physics homework on or whatever. But they had the advanced intuition and knowledge of that. So with the EMFs and that, that's an explosion in current academia, where I believe Nikola Tesla is going to regain a lot of popularity that he lost amongst many scientific communities, and he's going to be restored or put on a platform of all time human beings with what his knowledge was
mhm,
of those frequencies and whatnot. We're just starting to tap in
yeah.
to those phenomenon. And so I can see a synergy emerging of in next generations to where consciousness raising and the connections and the communications and relationships with ET will happen. And then the three-dimensional beings will also be brought in to where then we'll realize that the universe exhibits and harbors all of these phenomena.
I this is reminding me, since you're talking about ET, coming home, so to speak, making themselves known. What about the Three-Eye Atlas? What do you think that is? Is that possibly an alien craft and bringing a group back to the Earth?
Oh, is that is you mean the what they're seeing now?
Yep.
Oumuamua and those?
No, no. Well, that was one, but the Three-Eye Atlas is the new one that's not acting like a comet. Avi Loeb wrote a paper on it with a couple of other scientists, and so there are differing opinions out there about this. And some people speculate it could be, our makers coming back to say hello, or check on us, or who knows? Maybe it's Twilight Zone
Y-
and there's a cookbook involved. I don't know.
Yes, so to speak. I'm not intimately familiar. I've heard of the most current iteration, the recent one. I've heard of it. Um, I'm going to reserve some judgment in that how will I put this? This is I think a clash of our increasing technological sophistication with being able to at least visually identify some of these solar system transient phenomenon objects, things like that. Our increasing sophistication with that. I think it's a clash between that and our lack of knowledge, so to speak. I don't want to come right out and
Could
say
be.
one way or the other that it is a ship, that or that, oh, no, 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 it's absolutely not a ship. No, 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 no. Like I said, I'm empirical enough, but I do have I would like to think I have an open enough mind to where um, if craft like that are coming through the solar system, they're not exhibiting the, how will I put this, their velocities and their paths where they, while they may be coming generally by Earth. I believe one of two possibilities. It could be a craft. It could be a craft of an ET entity that is not very, very much more technologically sophisticated than we are. Hence, the flight characteristics of the craft or whatever, or that it could be an ET of a very, very advanced nature. Both do exist as part of my universe of ET civilizations and whatnot. Or it could be an ET that is more advanced, and it just may be an example of one transient ET nation or whatever representative, just kind of giving us a look over. My point is that uh, I believe we are part of what's been called the zoo hypothesis, in that we've been watched by ET for many, 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 many thousands of years, and that if they want to continue watching us, they're doing it from the moon, they're doing it from Mars, they're doing it from Enceladus, they're doing it potentially from Pluto, all the rocky planets, and also too because they are still here, and that's where we tie in the examples of ET experiences and abductions and uh, experiences like that. Uh, they have the means and have had the means with which to watch us from a distance and to have interactions with us, to where a craft with the behavior characteristics like exist with the Oumuamua and the three-eyed, I believe that's why I'm on the fence. I don't know which way to go. Whether they're just space rocks that are more sophisticated visuals and whatnot, haven't been able to totally key in yet on that, or that they could be ETs and spacecraft or whatnot. That's basically. I'm sorry. I'm totally in the middle. Sorry about that.
You know what? That's a perfect place to be because you can't be wrong
It's
either
safe.
way, right?
It's safe. Yeah.
It's a safe place.
Being right is important, but being correct, I think, is the most important. So I think there's a difference between being
Right.
right and being correct. So it's boring. Sorry about that, but
That's that's quite all right.
it could
Uh,
be.
so, in your investigations and your field trips to all of these places around the world, what is the most astounding thing that you found that would really be a red flag? This is definitely ET.
There's so much. I encourage everybody that's listening to us. Thank you, by the way. Without audiences, these meetings and these interviews, these don't happen. These conferences. I thoroughly enjoy my times with my audiences and communities and that. Uh, my encouragement, if you haven't yet, for those of you that have traveled to some of these more exotic places throughout the world, continue to do it. For those of you that haven't, if you get the wherewithal and the option to do it, uh, do it. Just pick a point. Like I said, human beings are all the same all over the world. If it's Australia, if it's Peru or Bolivia, if it's Native America, if it's Stonehenge or Egypt or China, India, Nepal, do it. You're going to learn. There's so much more that is contained in the written literature, the academic literature and research literature that is not been brought on board or made completely transparent with popular culture. There's so much knowledge and information and data that exists within research records for us to learn an awful lot more from it. So to get back to the question of one place that would really pop out for me, I encourage you to look at all these places. There's so many that pop out in terms of on different dimensions. I've hiked into uh, the canyon in Canyonlands National Park, the Great Gallery and the Ghost Panels in the Badlands Canyons there in Utah. Sago Canyon is just replete, and that's kind of unique. These exotic places do have their unique signatures. So Utah is very resplendent with um, the imagery, the spiritual and the ghost-like imagery and the symbolism and the glyphs and whatnot. Certainly, Skinwalker Ranch in the northeast corner of Utah in the Wasatch Mountain region is very, very peculiar, and they're learning a lot of things from that. One place I was just in Peru and Bolivia just a couple of months ago, and their claim to uh, leaving their mark, so to speak, the existence of stargates. And what I mean by that is that Tiwanaku and Sacsayhuaman and Machu Picchu and Ollantaytambo, part of it is their architecture and to do with the stargates. Now, I'll tie in another concept with anthropology, the study of ancient human beings, and their spiritualism and their devotion to the sky, the sun, the moon, the day sky, and the night sky as being the most important aspect of their human nature and their human behavior. I was very captivated by all my travels through South America so far to where their architecture portrays the geometry of the stargate. So if you can picture a stargate, it's a trapezoid geometry. It's like a window, but it's not a square for how they put this, a square rectangle type. A trapezoid has angular sides on it. There's practical reasons why those pre-Incan cultures designed like that, because they have a lot of earthquakes there. And if you notice the architecture from all of those South American sites, the irregular geometry, the 12-sided stones that are placed together where you can't fit a piece of paper between them and there's no mortar, whatever. Um, those geometries exist for a practical reason in that they had the intuition. Those geometries, those architectures stood up best against earthquakes than any other architecture out there. We build our brick houses today like we slab and we go 90 degrees and pile up like that. But there's the mortar that we use creates straight vertical up and down a seam, so to speak. When an earthquake happens, and there's examples in South America in Machu Picchu that show this, and that'll be on my PowerPoint slides. Whereas they did that kind of architecture, earthquakes happened, the architecture fell apart. Their designs, from a practical standpoint, in using these 6 and 8 irregular geometry stones put together, such as what we have there, right? Those are the most earthquake resistant architectures of anything. And as you can see, the Stargate down on the bottom, thank you, Margie. The Stargate on the bottom and the trapezoidal shapes and whatnot, and the designs of their windows are like that, but also inverted. So where instead of being upside down, they're right side up, so to speak. Now the tie-in with the ancient, I call it archaeoastronomy, and that's our ancestors' study and devotion to the skies, the skyscape, the night sky, the day sky, and whatnot. There's the underground, there's the terrestrial world, there's the underworld, and then there's the upper world of the skyscape and that. Now, I'm going to bring in an example, and thank you. I can tie this in, Margie, with my presentation here, my PowerPoint, in that I was going to talk quite a bit about Göbekli Tepe. I've also been there too, and I'm very, very amazed as another takeaway for the potential interactions and existence with ET and the development of gods and deities and the electromagnetic frequencies of matter vibrating with energy frequencies and whatnot. So Göbekli Tepe, as you may or may not know, is been dated to have been created over 12,000 years ago. So I'll make this the best visual presentation I can. There's four currently. Thank you. In that slide, if you want to leave that up for a little bit, there are 95% of Göbekli Tepe is still buried. So this is part of the 5% that's visible that I've been able to hands-on and study. Their connection with the night sky, and I'm coming to the trapezoidal shape of the stargates and whatnot. The buildings at Göbekli Tepe were circular structures that had pillars around them structured like Stonehenge, but in the middle they had two upright pillars called central pillars. They were raised on an altar. So there was a slab from the ground level. There was a slab that was the altar, and then there was twin pillars, central pillars that one could stand between. Part of the ritual ceremony was this: the devotion to ancestral worship and whatnot, and their ceremonies involved with it. Now, these central pillars in each of these buildings, they built one building and used it for a few hundred years. That time has been determined to be about 11,500 years ago. Now, as I do with all of my anthropology, archaeology expeditions, I have a compass with me, and I'm taking compass readings all over. That's a bit of a close-up. So if you can picture the central pillars there and remember the compass directional point that is inherent within the design of these central pillars. The four buildings, A, B, C, and D. D is the oldest one, 11,500 years ago. The compass coordinate is roughly 353 degrees, 353, 355. If you stand on that central pillar and you look up at the night sky in that direction, 11,500 years ago, you're going to see what's known as the North Star. Now, in the night sky, they knew all the stars moved around, the stars had patterns, the Milky Way was heaven and hell to them. They all had patterns, all the stars moved except for one, relatively speaking. That's known as the North Star. Now, the North Star does move, but it takes over 70 years for a sharp, studied human being to even notice. The North Star, for all intents and purposes, didn't move. That was fascination amongst all human beings. All the other stars moved, the North Star didn't. Constellations revolve around the North Star. At that time, 11,500 years ago, and this is where my thesis here, it's coming up. It's actually in my new book coming up. I differ quite a bit from what's been put out there in the research about what those pillars at Göbekli Tepe, and what the star constellations were involved. My thesis is that at that time, the North Star was known as one of the stars in the Hercules constellation, Iota Hercules. The big square that you see in the summertime in North America, if you stand at night and you look directly overhead, you see a big square. Actually, that's Pegasus, but Hercules is another. The core of Hercules is also a square shaped, but it's a trapezoidal shaped four-sided figure. The North Star for Hercules, the rest of Hercules revolved around this North Star. The devotion and the fascination with the North Star and the geometry inherent within the Hercules constellation, and then there from the trapezoidal square, there's tentacles. I'll call them tentacles or arms that go out in four different directions from each of the corners of this trapezoid. Our ancestors developed the intuition, the knowledge, and the human nature of the concept known as the four cardinal directions, and utilized the square, the trapezoid of the Hercules constellation in later designs, such as the geometry that you see in the stargates, in the portal, so to speak, that are characteristic. South America has an awful lot of them. North America has an awful lot. All civilizations do, but South America is especially. This is another behavioral characteristic of human beings in ancient times, in that they built upon their knowledge base of geometry, learning in the world around them, their environments, geometric shapes. The sun and the moon were in circles, hence early communities were circular shaped. Then they developed the knowledge that, hey, for practical purposes, horizontal rectangle rooms and houses, structures were better. The trapezoidal shaped windows, the basic square concept, could have been taken from knowledge of the stars, the constellations, and what they saw. I mean, isn't our zodiac and all the other constellations and the stories and the mythologies that we have developed and still kind of practice and use today, weren't they developed from shapes and geometry and the observations that our ancestors made from all of that? So at the time, building D was the path, the compass direction to the North Star in Hercules. After a few hundred years, that North Star, the Hercules constellation, is going to move away from being the North Star in the night sky. So what happened was, the building D for David, for dog, at Göbekli Tepe, it fell out of use. What happened was, the North Star and the constellation known as Hercules moved a few degrees to the west. Another North Star was replacing it, but there was some fascination with the Hercules constellation that when the next building was built by the indigenous at Göbekli Tepe, building C, it's a few hundred years younger, and the compass direction at the central pillars for building C point and continue to point directly at the Hercules constellation and what I call its cousin sister constellation of Corona Borealis. Corona is known, it's pictured in the sky being next to Hercules. It looks like the letter C, a big letter C. And they follow each other through the sky, through the precession of the equinoxes. They're together next to each other in the sky. So after a few hundred years, the compass direction of building C is roughly about 345 to 47 degrees. Hence, It follows the precessional equinox, the direction flow of the Hercules and the Corona Borealis constellations. After a few hundred years, building C went out of use. What happened when a building went out of use? The ritual, human, the attitude and behavior characteristics was, as they do with human beings did back then and do today, when a human has passed on to the next life, they bury them. Building D went out of use. So ritually, they buried it. They covered it up. They filled it in. Building C went out of use. They buried that. They filled it up. Building B was created with a compass point that continued to follow the night sky. And that section of the sky that was Hercules, Corona Borealis, and the Milky Way, tying, I mean, there was other, Cygnus was also very important as other constellations. But the coordination with the compass readings, the architecture of the various buildings at Göbekli Tepe, the different iterations, and the rituals, the lifespan and the ritual, the ancestor worships that went on afterwards, all fit together, not with Cygnus as being the central figure. And some research has been trying to put Orion in that situation also, which is it's not correct, in that 11,000 years ago, in that part of the world, in the northern hemisphere, Orion wasn't even barely visible. It was only part of it was just starting to come up over the horizon. You couldn't see the belt of Orion. You couldn't see the star Sirius until the very, very early pre-dynastic Egyptian times. So the archaeoastronomy fits with this notion that Hercules, Corona Borealis, being the North Star and following its procession through, and also being adjacent constellations to the Milky Way, as those being very important for the path of souls and the continued ancestor worship. Those were the things that drove human beings way back then. And hopefully we can revisit and rediscover and become reaware of that now. Now, whether what ET involvements are in relationship to that, I kind of went off in a big anthropology, archaeology direction for a while, but the solid proof that ET exists, unfortunately, we don't have the artifacts, so to speak, that we can pick up, metal fragments or spaceships, things like that. We have the symbolism that exists, that show various ET forms and spaceships, and I have in Native America, I found a petroglyph panel to where there was a crow that was etched on one rock, it had its beak open and a circular line, it was warning, and the circular line went around the contour of the rock. So you move around to the side of the rock and you see a picture, an image of a spacecraft launching from the ground with the fire stream behind it, the craft in one of the classic shapes, and the dome on top of it, which they included the detail of the rays coming off of the top of the dome. And that's a universal petroglyph symbolism. When you see an object with many rays coming off of it, that means bright light. That means it's shining. And that's universal throughout human existence. So you've got all of those petroglyphs and whatnot. So we're limited with the ETs, well, going back into Neolithic times, because we don't have the written cuneiform, such as in later Mesopotamia, in Egypt and whatnot. We have to rely on, until we can find the artifacts that will show us, hey, we've got a spaceship here, or hey, we've got skeletons of VTs and whatnot.
Well,
in prehistoric,
we may have them, but the public doesn't have them.
What the
Uh,
most fantastic, yes, Margie, yes, that and the most fantastic part is of this whole thing for everybody is what's left to be discovered. We haven't even started to discover and learn about all these things. So it's
right.
a unfortunately a piecemeal type of a thing. And yeah, circling back to I think the beginning of my presentation, saying that we can't rely on the government to help disclose things for us. It's our descendants maybe sometime getting into the knowledge and the details that yeah, Gobekli Tepe, they did have spaceships, and we did recover some of them or whatnot. So we're left to rely on the symbolism to do with the petroglyphs and things like that.
Keith,
Um,
I found a few photos of some petroglyphs or pictograms. I wonder if you could speak to these, if you know about these particular ones.
okay, that one. Um, that one I haven't seen before, but if I could apologize, I'm going to put on my pragmatic helmet here. Uh, I'm going to say that may not be totally authentic.
Okay.
And yes, that's not authentic. I don't no.
Called Pelo Blanco.
Yeah, no. Yes, that's one. Uh, yes, I mean, I've certainly got the open mind. I would not say that's fake. That was actually one of the ones in my PowerPoint. Um,
Okay.
that was another one in my PowerPoint. That is Kimberley. Is that Australia? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. That one, yeah, Australia is burgeoning too with some Aborigine interest, but also too locations and regions of particular current interest. Alice Springs, Pine Gap in Australia, and there's a base on the very northwest coast of Australia. In any event, these are ultra top secret military bases, Pine Gap especially, that curiously uh, was built at the very same time that Area 51 in Nevada came into
Hmm.
existence. Look back at the records. There was a treaty with between Australia, New Zealand, and the U.S. called the ANZUS Treaty, and it asked for and motivated the creation, the development of the region in Pine Gap, known as the Pine Gap site, so to speak. Um, the project was started in 1951 to build the Pine Gap
Wow.
facilities. It was the closest civilization. The closest city is Alice Springs, and that's, I believe, south by 100 miles or so. So it's in the middle of the outback. All of a sudden, the buildings and architecture, this community went up of these ultra modern, ultra lavish, very livable human communities, homes, and whatnot. No one lived there. All of a sudden, this base was built, and all of these communities and homes and developments were built, ultra modern, hundreds and back in 1950 dollars, hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars built for a particular facility. It's as guarded as Area 51. This is just
Wow.
I don't know, conversation maybe for a talk or something. I have no proof, but people, well, how was the title Area 51 created? That's my version, is that there's a connection somehow between Nevada's base and Alice Springs, Pine Gap, and there was a base in New Zealand for a little while that was in existence. The three countries were in agreement in this coalition. New Zealand dropped out, I believe it was in the mid '80s of this three-way coalition or whatever. The facade for building Pine Gap was that it was being able to track burgeoning satellites from Earth orbit or whatever. It was Cold War technology to the U.S. didn't have any kind of a situation to more directly survey Soviet and then later on Chinese military activities and whatnot. So that was part of it. But also, too, as I mentioned, you get into the conversation and speculation, and there may be in some research there's answers there. That Area 51 in Nevada was created at the same time as Pine Gap in Australia, and the name in New Zealand, the base escapes me there, but they were all started at the same time in and
Mm.
around 1951. So
Well, I did not know that. So that is a strange coincidence, or maybe not.
again, right, speculation, or if you're quaffing your favorite libation or something, you could go off and speculate about that a little bit. So, but in any event, my point is, yeah, Kimberly, is that ETs, the Aborigines, uh, uh, they experienced the same things, and unfortunately, uh, they only had the symbolism of the pictorial representations, which then was later on eventually developed into cuneiform language. Incidentally, on the language thing, going back to Göbekli Tepe real quick, and going back to Hercules and Corona Borealis. On I believe it's Pillar 18 at Göbekli Tepe. And it's a few of them, Pillar 43 and other ones. There's depictions of anthropomorphs. They are beings with arms and belts and things like that. And on the belts of some of these are the letters. You see the formations C's and H's and I's. Now, my dear friend and research colleague, Dr. Robert Schock, he's a geologist with Boston University. I have been very fortunate to travel with him extensively. And he wrote a research paper with Menu Seisada a few years ago, basically proposing that the first word in human language, human linguistics, was depiction of that representation on, yes, the side of that particular pillar at Göbekli Tepe, the C's and the H's and the I's. And that first word in human existence, their proposal is meaning the word God. When you put together all of the characteristics, the landscape, the environment, the location of a particular building and its purposes, Göbekli Tepe was the first known, at least anyways, in my idea, the first known totem poles, our Native American totems carved out of wood and whatnot. Göbekli Tepe had these totems, this totem idea, thousands of years before Native America did. These are representations of totems, the C's and the H's, potentially meaning the word God. But my belief is that they were pictorial visual representations of what they saw as part of their ceremonies in the night sky. The shape of Hercules is basically the letter H. The shape of Corona Borealis is basically the letter C. And Hercules, because all the stars rotate, Hercules can be seen in the same night as being pictured like the letter H or the letter X or the letter I. So that's where the eyes come in when you look at the various pillars and the panels at Göbekli. So all of those features of this time scale, the temporality of the existence of Göbekli Tepe, their purposes, the rituals and the ceremonies, and the power and control, the development of cities. These were communities. These weren't we're going to redefine hunter-gatherer as we already are starting to do. Göbekli Tepe will become to be known as communities of people, as basically hunter-gatherers, but not egalitarian. They had a governing body. They had leaders. They had power and control mechanisms. They had leadership, and they had the shamans as were mechanisms or tools of the leadership. But they had all of these things put together, the purpose and the conditions and the attitudes and behaviors and whatnot fit into the best archaeoastronomy landscape that is represented by my idea of Hercules and Corona Borealis as adjacent to the Milky Way for ancestral worship, amongst other ceremonies, the transfer of those souls that have passed, giving them the guidance and the pathway into heaven. Cygnus being the bird that directs the soul from the terrestrial world of Earth, the underworld, on the path into the jumping into the night sky, into Cygnus, and then as potential final destination, that keyhole through Hercules into the Milky Way, crossing the great river, so to speak, the Grand River, into heaven, eternal heaven, if that soul through samsara and many iterations, if that soul has passed through the pearly gate, so to speak, and has achieved the recognition of being put in eternity. So that's all, a
Wow.
lot of relationships going on there. But again, this is all human beings, and we have those same attitudes and behaviors today that our ancestors did. And
Mhm.
with the ETs, again, unfortunate that we that far back in time, we have to so far rely on uh, symbolism, pictographs and petroglyphs and whatnot. And then as only thousands of years later, when formal languages became commonplace, where we started to have the stories of folklore too. But again, you going back that far in time, folklore is more difficult 12,000 years ago than it is for, say, Native America. Well, Native America goes back many thousands of years ago too, but they were better. Those are civilizations that have continued their existence and have been able to spread their verbal tales on down, whereas the civilizations of the Tepes, Göbekli and Anatolia and pre-Mesopotamia, those civilizations have
Yeah,
dispersed and have
right,
intermingled with other ones. So
right. So we
it's
don't have
difficult.
the oral history to
That's right.
follow. But wow,
That's correct. Yep. Yep.
everything you talked about this evening has been absolutely fascinating. Of course, with this group, we're interested in UFOs. So anytime you could connect, um, you know, history with UFOs, it's fantastic, and I think you've done a wonderful job of that. What do you have coming up? Where are you going to be going next?
Yeah, coming up in a few weeks, I'll be in Upper Peninsula in Harris, Michigan, by Marquette. I'm speaking at an ancient archaeology, American archaeology conference there. And I'm sorry I didn't get much into Native America tonight, but my talk there is going to be about again Native America and pre-Columbian travel. In other words, have you heard of the Solutrean theory, where
No.
uh, not only did our ancestors cross the land bridge from Siberia, but potentially they came from Europe.
Oh, yeah,
Now,
I've
Native
heard that. Mhm.
Okay, so in that part of Native America, real quick, the impetus and the fascination is with native natural resources, basically copper. And
Mhm.
Michigan copper is the subject of my research, and tracing that back to potentially where ain't the ancient not Mesopotamia, but the Minoans and the Mycenaeans and Egyptians and whatnot, they traveled to the U.S. to Lake Superior, Upper Michigan, to
Yeah.
mine copper as part, and brought it back with them as part of the copper and the bronze culture. So that's my deep dive into new research on that, so to speak. And there's I got some stuff on DNA and genetics and things like that. There's some genetic anomalies that exist amongst certain Native American tribes in the Great Lakes region that don't exist anywhere else. So, so I tie the Native American with that. But then a few weeks after Halloween week, I was invited back to Roswell. So, if any of you that are going to be in Roswell, I'll be at the museum the weekend before Halloween, and I've got open air for both days, the whole weekend. I can do a formal presentations. I can I'm going to open it up. I'm not going to do formal, but I'm just going to open it up to anybody, Q&As, and I'm there for 2 days. And you can visit me there, visit the museum. Karen and Kat will certainly welcome you. And then the next weekend after that, I'm in Baltimore speaking at the Mysteries of Space and Sky conference, which will be November the 1st. After that, then I get ready for my trip to Easter Island, Christmas
Yeah.
and New Year's week.
Will you come back
So,
and come back again sometime and share some of your travels and your findings?
oh, I'd love to with that. And now that I apologize. This is my first digital experience on Unix. Now that I've walked a mile, I'll have my slides ready where we'll be able to show you some live
Okay.
slides. But in any event, I will get my PowerPoint. I will get those slides up on my website. Thehumaniverse.org or thehumaniverse.com. My whole platform is under the Humaniverse title, brand, so to speak. So that's social media, the website. My books are all titled that. And you Google the Humaniverse, and basically my works will pop up.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keith. We appreciate it.
Okay, Margie. Again, thank you everybody out there for listening in. Without you, these things don't exist, and this is how we get knowledge out to society. There's so much knowledge in there, and just soak it up as much as you can.
That's right. And share this video with everyone you know. Oh,
Absolutely,
all
absolutely.
right. Thank you, Keith. We'll be in touch.
Okay, Margie. Thanks. Enjoy. Have a good night.
All right. Another presentation finished. It's absolutely fascinating. Can't wait to have him come back sometime. We'll see you all next time.